Discord, well, who is he? He's the dragon of chaos. I mean, obviously, the bloody dragon of chaos. I mean, do I even need to say it? And what does he do? Well, he creates conflict for the story. He's a dangerous man. He threatens society. And if he's not defeated, well, he's going to eat you. He'll destroy everything if given the chance, roughly speaking. So you've got to get rid of him purely from an analytical perspective. But you also can't get rid of him entirely because he keeps tyranny in check and represents unexplored territory. And that's where new exciting things like Chaos Man. You know, it's a funny thing. It's like the creation and destruction of nature all at once. That's what he means to Fluttershy from a symbolical point of view. It's established that she's afraid of dragons, but loves animals which his body is composed of. So you can't see from a data-driven initiative why she's so torn up about him. And she's like a Pegasus, right? Well, okay, what is a Pegasus? They've got wings. They fly. Well, what does that mean? Well, roughly speaking, it means she was born to explore and see the world. But she's hiding from it, isn't she? She's obviously too fearful to even go outside, let alone confront any of it, which just makes her bloody pathetic. She can't grow. So mythologically, Discord's like the personification of the unexplored territory for her that she's been ignoring all her life. Chaos is where you don't know where things are, roughly speaking, and she really needs some chaos in her life. He's like the unbridled forces of nature now arrived at her doorstep. And if she doesn't learn to face it, the dragon of chaos could very well end her. You know what else Discord is? A man who never cleaned his room. No, really, he is. He's like Peter Pan. He never learned how to take on responsibility, which just makes him an abject failure, really, roughly speaking. He doesn't realize he needs to allow someone to tame him in order to be happy. You know, alicorns, the second most perfect life forms in the world, are remarkably similar to lobsters. Those special Nephropody who run the top of their dominance hierarchy mirror alicorn supremacy, practically on a 1-to-1 scale. It's winner take all in the lobster kingdom, just as how the top 0.0001% of ponies, the alicorns, hold 50% of the magical power all by themselves. The biggest, toughest lobsters get to rule the kingdom, call all the shots and select all the best mates. It's like, geez, overbearing much. Well, that's what happens. Knowing your level on the social ladder is critical for survival among ponies. They're a herd-like species. It's hardwired into their DNA. Speaking of DNA, you might be surprised to find out alicorns and lobsters share over 83% of it. Lobsters all fight, and the results have pretty serious consequences, man. The loser lobsters literally change biologically in brain and chemistry. They even carry themselves differently, losing confidence and adopting a submissive posture, even when no one else is around. It's like they are permanently altered on a fundamental level. Roughly speaking, you didn't think it was a coincidence. Celestia is among the tallest ponies alive, did you? She is top lobster, all the alicorns are. Stressing out about one's position in the dominance hierarchy is pretty ancient stuff. I'm not kidding. Ponies have nervous systems attuned to status, and the ones at the top produce more serotonin, which, interestingly enough, is known to correlate very strongly with magical proficiency in pony kind, alicorns included. More magic equals more serotonin output, roughly speaking. Dominant lobsters are drowning in serotonin. As a matter of fact, I'd conclude that lobsters are pretty magical, wouldn't you? I'm serious. In fact, I'm currently researching lobsters in a 10-cat home to see if they could unlock the secrets of immortality like the alicorns have. Those sexy lobsters can live a pretty long time after all. Roughly speaking. Okay, so what's the first thing that happens? Well, Twilight is told she'll be taking a test, right? So naturally, she prepares herself by reading books and studying. That's what the academic types think the purpose of university is. You think hours and hours of pouring through pages is going to prepare you for the real world. No, man, you're like a worm that's never seen a drop of rain if that's all you do. That's like 5% of the purpose of schooling at best. So naturally, her mentor gives her a task she's wholly unprepared for. because that's what mentors do. If you're a parent, you don't want your child to just be doing things they're already good at. You've got to challenge them a little, because if not, then what? The real world is going to come around, and the dragon of chaos is just going to swallow them whole. So what's the next thing that happens? Twilight sets off to this mythical crystal empire. Now what is that? That's adventure, man. That's stepping into unknown territory. That's where the true dangers of this world lie. So naturally, that's what she encounters next. King Sombra. Now what the hell kind of name is Sombra? It's so bloody fascinating. He's the shadow, man. The dark side of humanity. That's the appealing tyranny of extremist ideologies that always lurks in the darkness. And soon we learn that Sombra actually ruled the Crystal Empire. And everyone wants to just forget about it. Now what does that mean? Now, you have to approach these things in a sophisticated manner. Think about it. What's an extremist ideology that killed millions, that everyone wants to just up and forget happened? That's the communist utopia, man. That's the horror of the 20th century, that these postmodern Marxists forget ever happened. And I just don't understand it. Leftist types are just like these blind ponies who want to just up and forget the tragedies of the past, because no one wants to think about them. But you better think about them. And I've thought about them for 40 years. Because if you don't, then the flood is going to come, and you won't have an art to survive against it. Now, this is the really weird part, and it's so strange. I had to think about this for like 20 years to figure it out. Okay, so the Crystal Empire has a heart, which is celebrated during the annual Crystal Fair, which renews the spirit of love in the empire. The lights within the ponies power the crystal heart that powers the kingdom. Now, what in the world does that mean? Well, it's something like this. You'll believe that the image of God was something like this, roughly speaking. And so Christians project the image of their self onto the figure of Christ. And the theology is crystal clear. They said, "It is not I who live, but Christ who lives in me." So what is this really saying? Well, it's something like this. The lights within the Christians powered the heart of Christ that powered the kingdom of God, roughly speaking. Now the issue is back to Sombra. Well, what did he do? He took away the heart. That's Western culture. Man, that's the presupposition of God in our morality. So what does that do? It plunges the kingdom into chaos. And that's when Sombra takes control of it. That's the promise of tyrannical order. Man, that's the egoistic antidote to nihilism that Nietzsche predicted would happen and will live through in the 20th century. So what do you do when the world has been plunged into darkness and the value structures that guided the meaning in our lives crumble? That's what this episode tries to find out. That's the test Twilight has to do. So what does she do first? She puts forth a fake crystal heart. So what in the bloody hell does that mean? Well, think about it. What did the Jews do when they left the tyranny of the Pharaoh? They started worshipping idols.
And the people sinned a great sin, for they had made them a god of gold. And they bore him upon their shoulders and rejoiced, saying, "This be our God, O Israel."
Well, what would you do if you're blind to the world and can't remember why life had any meaning? It's something to hold on to, man. And when you're swallowed by the flood of chaos, you better believe you'll hold on to whatever you can to stay afloat. But Twilight knows this won't work. It's temporary, in a sense, because it's an empty lie. So she has to restore the crystal heart from wherever Sombra hid it. She has to rescue the father of tradition from the belly of the whale. And that's bloody difficult, man. That's where you face your true fears. Your own personal dragon. But, and this blew my mind the first time I watched it, she has to use Sombra's magic to do it. Now you may ask yourself, why in the bloody hell does she have to do that? Well, think about it. Why aren't you a truly evil person? Is it because you don't want to be? Or because you can't? And if you think you can't, well, I've got news for you. Let go. But you're the most evil person of them all. You just haven't been in a situation where you can't show how evil you are just yet. That's Christ's encounter with Satan. That's Harry Potter being marked by Voldemort. Man, I tell you, these things have been thought through. So Twilight finally gets to the heart, and then what happens? She's trapped as she saves it, and her companion has to deliver it. That's true bloody sacrifice, man. That's Christ in the Gospels. So this is what it says. It's something like this. It was the followers of Christ that had to deliver the Gospels. That's the sacrifice of the hero man. You're not sacrificing yourself like that. Who are you? You're not Twilight. You're Spike.